George Kittle might be the best tight end in football, but the pass-catching star wants to be paid more than just the best tight end, wants a little more cheese. Now The Athletic reports Kittle could ultimately land a long-term deal worth about $13 million bones a season, which will be $3 million more than the next highest-paid tight end, who is Austin Hooper. However, Kittle reportedly wants more than that and closer to the top wide receiver contract, in or out. A $13 million average salary is a good deal for both Kittle and the Niners.
I'm going to say inbounds of this, BT. The actual highest tight end is Hunter Henry. He's making 10.6 in the league. But when you go back and you look at the previous highs, which was Travis Kelce, this is before Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Travis Kelce's jump from where it was about 15 to 20% from the previous high. If Kittle gets 13 million, it's like a 30% jump from the previous high and putting him closer towards a wide receiver. He's 26 years old or 27 years old. He was a 5th-round pick, so he's never been paid. Nope. I think this is right for him, and I think it's right for the 49ers, who don't have a ton of cap space, by the way. Only $12 million under the cap, so you'd have to get really creative with the structure of this thing so it doesn't penalize you in the subsequent years. So I'm going to say inbounds. I think it is the right deal, but you got to be careful thinking about paying tight ends like wide receivers.
You know, not only is he, one of the best players vertically, any position, but he's also, on the short list of players you really want to watch. You really want to watch this guy play football. Like, he's got passion, he's got moves, he's got wiggle, he's got burst, he's got, he's just got a presence. He's got a dynamic presence, and that plays out in the stats. I mean, he catches almost 90 balls a year. He gets a ton of targets, and, you'd like to see a few more touchdowns. He's had 5 the last couple of years, but that's more of a product of a relatively conservative offense. I think the world of this guy. I think he's an absolute superstar. I think 13 is a fine number. I have no problem with it. My answer is inbounds as well. I don't care what Hooper's making. Hunter Henry, all these guys are fine. They're good. They cannot shine this guy's shoes. I mean, this guy is a legitimate superstar who changes the entire tenor of a stadium's level of enthusiasm. Not many guys can do it. Think about that. Not many players can do that. Like, obviously, Ray Lewis could do that. There's a couple of defensive players like Prime and Lawrence Taylor over the years. But, Barry Sanders can do it offensively. And, of course, I'm leaving out a relatively long list, I'm sure. But now, George Kittle's one of those guys because he plays with a ferocity kind of like Shockey. Yeah. Only he's faster.
Yeah.
I mean, he just injects a jolt of enthusiasm into that stadium. Well, I love the guy. My answer is inbounds. Pay him. If the 2020 NFL season actually happens, dear football gods, please let it happen. Players will be subjected to a number of COVID-related protocols and restrictions. Now, ESPN reports that players were informed by the NFLPA that they could be fined for ignoring protocols or other, quote, reckless behavior away from the field, such as eating at restaurants or using ride-share services. In or out. The NFL should fine and maybe even suspend players and coaches who ignore safety protocols.
I'm going to say out of bounds of this, BT, because if you end up missing time because you contract the coronavirus, it's kind of not dissimilar outside of the facility, obviously. It's kind of like the non-football injury clause. It's already included in your contracts, and so there'll be an investigation, just like there would be one if you, were playing basketball and hurt your ankle or cut your hand in the kitchen doing something and it kept you out for a significant time. They'll do some investigation. If they determine that you were negligent to your responsibilities as a player and or coach, I don't know if coaches have this clause, but I know players do, then you'll be out without pay. So I'm going to say out of bounds to that because I don't think you can infringe upon their liberties as a private enterprise.
It's far too logical of a response. I mean, come on. What are you hitting me with logic for?
I'm just telling you. Because this was going to happen. The PA is going to like fight them if they get fined or suspended or something like that. And that's what all it's going to come down to. So come down to legalese.
My answer was far less cerebral. Just I say inbounds, just if nothing else, as a deterrent. Even though I'm a possible deterrent. Even though the union could fight it and probably get all fines and suspensions rescinded. I hear you. I would just say this unique state of where we are in the world in 2020, if you want to get back to playing games, probably calls for a really unique and rules that infringe on your personal space too. I hear you, but my answer was inbounds when I read it before the show, and I'll stick with it. I mean, maybe it dissuades 3, 4, 7, 10, 12 people out of over 1,000 in the NFL from doing something sloppy, and maybe that actually keeps the season going. Who knows? All right, moving on. Number Trey, McClure. Say, is it McClure?
McClure.
It is McClure.
McClure, yeah.
McClure Maker, Thon Maker's brother. It's a really interesting story.
Yeah, it is.
I know we're going to want to circle back to this in the third hour. We were going back and forth on Slack with this. This is incredible. 5-star hoops recruit, all right, who was deciding between Kentucky, Memphis, and UCLA. But you know where he's going? He's going to historically black college Howard. So Maker is the cousin of Pistons forward Thon Maker, and he's the first 5-star prospect to commit to an HSBC in recent history, and will be the first HSBC player drafted since 2012. That was Kyle O'Quinn, a New York kid. All right, in or out. Considering the social climate, we will see more 5-star prospects committing to HSBCs.
This is a hard one. I'm going to say out of bounds, even though I hope that it does lead to a trend, especially for specific, elite players. Now, the reason this is important for McClure is because he could go anywhere. He could have done anything. He could have went to play in Europe. He could have played in the developmental G League, the trend, whatever that thing is called, developmental program. He could have went to one of the Blue Buds. It wouldn't have mattered because he was going to be potentially a lottery pick next year anyways. And so by choosing to go to a historically black college university, he's taking advantage, not taking advantage, but he's capitalizing on the movement that's happening in this country right now. This racial equity, awareness thing that's happening in our country is important to him. When you listen to him speak, he's very aware and acute and intelligent. And I know he knows this means something more than just, I want to go to Howard, which, by the way, have won 4 games over the last 2 seasons, so they're not a good program.
They could use him.
But they could use him, and it's not going to matter where he goes to school. If he gets drafted number 1 overall, I think it might start to trend it the other. Maybe it starts becoming a trend, but my gut is that it won't be.
Listen, this is a great thing, and there's been, I've heard conversations about this now for well over a year.
That's right.
There was a group of young players that have really thought about this. This is not out of nowhere. This has actually been percolating for a while. I'm going to say inbounds. Though, but you have to understand the way Mike frames the question, that it's going to lead to more 5-stars going to historically black colleges. None went. So the fact, even if one more decides to go, the answer would literally be inbounds.
Yeah, if 2 go, it's 100% increase from last year.
Yeah, so I'm kind of looking at it that way. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really cool. But again, we were going back and forth on our Slack channel today. Some of the other schools in the MEAC, not that that's the only conference that has that historically black schools, but Howard's conference, for example, right? Like Maryland Eastern Shore, Coppin State, Bethune. Some of these facilities just aren't very good.
Yeah.
And this gentleman, this young man, is from Kenya. Spent time in Australia. He's not your typical American kid who's coddled and has his hand held from the time he's 9 because he's great at hoops and he gets everything given to him. So when it's time to pick a college, if he's going to college, he wants to charter flights. He wants to play in front of 20,000 people. It takes a unique young man to weigh the merits of everything and not just basketball.
Yeah.
And I think most young men care more about basketball than being a symbol of real change for this.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a crapshoot. The competition's not as good. And think about this. Even Cole Anthony. We thought Cole Anthony was going to be the first overall pick this year.
Right.
Cole Anthony went to Cam. I know he got hurt, but he went to Cam. He's not what we thought he was, with all due respect to Greg and Cole.
Right.
Tune in next time for another edition of Inbounds or Out of Bounds with Tiki and Tierney.